Peter.
Hey, Laura, how are you?
I'm good. I am excited about what we're going to announce to all 8 people who will care.
That there's a new pope?
There's a new pope. It's
Yeah,
going to
the
get
world.
lost in the news shuffle that we have a name for our pod and that this is going to be officially a podcast. Peter, do you want to share the name?
Thank you for the honor. Well, we're launching the Across the Bar podcast because, of course, that's what we would call it, Across the Bar, where we
Get it
take
like
legal
bar, like
issues.
law.
Right.
Also, we might record some at a bar because this is
Yeah.
we hope it's the kind of conversation you would have with a really smart, good friend at a bar.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it at a bar that I'm an investor in that was just named number 5 bar
Fancy.
in the world, Sip and Guzzle.
Fancy. Okay. Yeah, we'll do it at the club you're an investor in. That sounds good. Sip and guzzle. Okay. So I don't mean to blow smoke at you, but it seems like they're blowing smoke in the Vatican.
World's largest promotion meeting just adjourned.
What? Okay. What is a better promotion? Going from the vice president of non-insurance products to the head of Berkshire Hathaway, or going from like cardinal number 4 to the left to Pope?
I mean, 2 really great jobs and 2
Really big
really huge.
promotions, right?
Right, that happened in 1 week. Pretty incredible. I mean, a pretty incredible run for Warren Buffett and an incredible promotion from VP of whatever, which is a pretty
Yes.
bland.
Okay, so across the bar, we're going to be talking about how the news and the chaos is affecting your work life, being a good boss, running a good company, thriving in whatever you're doing work-wise. Any other comments?
Exactly. The recipe for success as an executive and conscientious manager.
And Peter has been a leading employment attorney for over 2 decades. And I have been a journalist for over 2 decades and oversaw career content at Cosmo at 17, created a whole editorial product for WeWork back when they had a lot of money for things like an editorial product. And I've spent a lot of my time thinking about what makes for a good work life.
I work with executives every day. And one of the things I learned pretty quickly in this practice is that, it's lonely at the top. There's not a lot of people to talk to. These days, you go to HR, you talk to them about things. Well, frankly, you wouldn't because you'd be afraid that something else would happen with it that wasn't intended. So
That's true.
let's help our viewers and our clients, get some real practical advice that they could use on a day-to-day basis and pull it from sources that everyone's reading and talking about. But we're going to talk about it from a work perspective.
There is a moment in the first season of The West Wing where CJ Craig is very mad at Rob Lowe's character. Allison Janney as CJ Craig is angry at Sam Seaborn, Rob Lowe's character, and Josh Lyman, Bradley Whitford's character. And she says, I am always your first phone call. I think your lawyer and your comms person should both be your first. Like they are the people when something is happening. Your lawyer and your comms person are your best defense against the world.
Yeah, calls 1A and 1B. And I find that my smartest clients don't hate lawyers. They embrace lawyers and they listen to what they have to say. And same with the comms teams. And we work together a lot. I work with comms people a lot because I represent a lot of high-level executives. And when they're going into places, coming out of places, messaging, coverage, it's all a very important part of the equation. It's good that we're here together for the people.
Thank goodness.
It's what the people wanted.
Everybody breathe a sigh of relief.
Right.
Okay. Oh, there is a lot of confusion out there around DEI and what companies are allowed to do, not allowed to do, if and when it should be messaged to employees. There is a lot of confusion out there about how companies should handle the shifting landscape in terms of DEI. 2 years ago, if you didn't have a head of DEI and a real commitment to affinity ERG programs, you were lambasted all over the place. Now, if you talk about DEI, you're liable for certain things. What are the new rules?
I wish I could tell you what the new rules are, but I can tell you that I've had some really interesting conversations over the past couple of weeks with people who are cutting deals with the administration. So those are
Individual
people,
companies cutting deals?
yeah, law firms cutting
Okay.
deals. I spoke with several leaders at different law firms. I've spoken with leaders of other companies that are not cutting deals, but are trying to get out of the spotlight. So they're cutting the programs, or they're changing the names, or the terminology, or the focus. And I've talked to employees who are upset about these changes or impacted by them, laid off, et cetera. So the short answer to your question is we don't have the new rules yet, but here's what I can tell you, pulling from all these experiences. These are important conversations. They should be taken seriously on both sides. So if you're an executive delivering news to your employees, I think, this is probably one of the most important conversations you're ever going to have with your employees. Because yes, you are dealing with something that's occurring right now, but it's something they will remember forever, or as long as they work with you. So my suggestion is figure out what your message is going to be, figure out what your changes are going to be. And before you deliver it to the broad group, pull in some leaders from your company, either the head of these ERG groups, long-term
What?
managers.
Who do you call first?
Well, you're going to call your lawyer and your comp people first, to formulate it. But after
Just
that,
making sure. Okay.
yeah, after that, you're gonna preview it with some groups, long-term managers, heads of ERG groups. See how they react. Explain why you're doing this. Explain what you're doing. Share the message. Make changes. It's important to have allies in this process. Honestly, nobody really likes what's going on. It's created huge tensions in the
I
workplace.
think that's true that no one really likes it.
Well, there's one group of
I don't
people
like
that.
it. You don't like it. But, um, I know someone recently who applied someplace and there were pronouns when they got something back and decided they didn't want to work for that company. It's
Okay.
the backlash is startling.
Hey, look, there's middle ground. If you don't want to work in a company where people have pronouns on their emails, like fine, okay, that's your right. Go work somewhere else. But it
What?
doesn't mean we have to end all these programs for everybody.
How much protection does it provide when the stockholders or the board vote to keep a DEI program, which has happened at a couple companies? Can you speak to that? How that all works?
Sure. I mean, there's been a few companies where shareholders have introduced resolutions to end DEI programs. I think Costco was one, Walmart was one. I think even Berkshire Hathaway, we were talking about earlier, was one. And those were rejected. And I think that's telling, and it gives a lot of room to executives to maintain programs or reshape them in a way that maintains the values and the spirit and the intentions behind the programs. Then there are other companies like Target, which, eliminated their programs, and they're experiencing the other type of backlash, which is boycotts and constant negative PR.
Did they really think that amount of swing was not going to be noticed by consumers?
Well, that's why it's important not to operate out of fear,
Yeah.
and this is a moment where we discover what the true values of companies are, and how they make decisions. I mean, if you have clear values that you've been following, then you should have a very clear guide in making these decisions. Like, how could we comply, but also uphold our values?
I think the hardest place to be in this kind of situation is senior middle management, where you are not the one making the decision, but you need to enforce it and disseminate it to a team. I was in a situation a few years ago where the vast majority of a certain group of employees were Black, and they wanted to recognize Black History Month. And management was not into it. And I found a compromise. So they got to do something, but it was very hard to manage as the person who I was so supportive of them recognizing Black History Month and was kind of caught in the middle. What is the responsibility of the middle person in the middle in those cases, do you think?
Well, it's a very tough place to be the senior middle managers. They're getting a lot of negative press. If you're in that position, my best advice to you is, like, don't try and figure it all out on your own. Don't take it all on your shoulders. reach out to help, reach out to HR, reach out to your supervisors and ask them, and tell them what's going on, and also suggest ways to handle it and ask them for assistance and support in doing it. And in connection with the DEI changes specifically, if you're running a company, there's no way you should let your middle managers
Take the
loose
heat.
without talking points,
Hmm.
and they should certainly be in the group you preview things with, because they're going to have to handle the conversations after.
Yeah, agree. One of the hardest things right now, I think, for everybody is all the uncertainty. The tariffs are changing every day. We're hearing the president saying the interest rate should be cut, the Fed saying, no, it isn't going to be cut. No, when the president acted like he could dismiss Jerome Powell, the markets went crazy. He stopped saying that, but there is still some confusion. How bad is this for American business at large? And as a leader or a boss or a business owner, like, what can you do to protect yourself in any way?
Well, we're starting to see the impacts, and there is a lot of uncertainty, and you've hit on a lot of different points. I mean, the president is obviously saying a lot of things that he has no power to actually do. He doesn't have the power to change interest rates. He doesn't have the power to fire a lot of these people that he's trying to fire. And it's taking some time to work through the courts, but the administration is mostly losing on all of these, attempts to go beyond their power. But the business impact is real. We're seeing this week, we've seen reports of, uncertainty causing like tremendous amounts of employee anxiety, causing a slowdown in hiring, causing a slowdown in innovation. I mean, these are all things that I've been hearing from my clients. They don't have time. They're not going to hire when they don't know what's going to happen with these tariffs, right? So if the point of the tariffs is to build in America and source in America, but then the tariffs are getting wiped away the next day or the next week, then no company's going to start building in that environment. I've seen a definite pause in hiring, see a lot of fear about upcoming firing, and we're seeing some signs like companies scaling back on their travel budgets and expense budgets and other things. These are indicators you normally see before a layoff. So I think we're going to have some layoffs coming up unless there's a U-turn on this tariff stuff. But the uncertainty has caused a lot of time spent on trying to figure out what's going on instead of figuring out how do we move ahead and maintain our, economic superiority over the world.
Okay, that's dark.
Sorry.
Okay, here's a question I have. Now, over the pandemic, I had to confess to my hair person when I colored my hair and cut my hair myself. I am going to confess to you right now that for a client recently, I created a contract on ChatGPT.
Wow.
Is that bad?
That's like a sort of insulting.
I know. I'm so sorry. Yeah,
You have a really great lawyer
I
that you
know. I have
know.
such a good lawyer. I know. Is that bad? Other than because it's mean to you, is that bad?
It's bad on a lot of levels. And I'm starting to hear this more and more, and it's like starting to piss me off more and more.
Yeah,
And
let's put a
also,
stop to this.
it's also making me question the intelligence of some people who are telling me this. So like let's just be really clear. If you have legal needs, I really don't recommend you go to ChatGPT with like issues personal to you. Like if you want to know general issues around the law, fine, do research, fine. But I've heard stories in the past few weeks of putting in employment agreements, putting in separation agreements. Guess what you're doing? You're giving these
All of
these
your data.
you're giving these LLMs like very personal data about you being fired or your salary or whatever that they're going to spit out to someone else. So
Have we
don't do
had
that.
any major LLM leaks yet? I mean, that's coming any minute.
It's a big issue. And when I talked about this, over the past couple of years, I would say, you don't want to put proprietary information in there. The company should have policies about that, because there are people who go around and scrape these LLMs for that type of
Peter,
information
people are going
specifically.
to find out our secret across the bar strategy.
Right. I mean, we would never put that document in ChatGPT ever.
Definitely not. Let me just fix something on my computer here. Kidding. Kidding. That was a joke.
So don't put your separation agreement in there. Don't put your employment agreement in there. Don't put your timeline of, important things that happened to me in there. And don't call a lawyer and say, well, ChatGPT told me X. Why are you telling me Y? Because they might hang up on you if they're not nice.
And if you say that to a judge is going to be like, fuck off, right?
Definitely don't say it to a judge.
Okay.
There's been cases of lawyers, presenting briefs to a judge with made up cases and non existing case law.
Say,
It's very embarrassing, led to sanctions. Bad, bad.
bad, bad, bad. Okay, we're going to do something new. Give me a win, heroes and losers this week. My hero, Anna Wintour, because that Met Ball, like my entire Instagram feed was Met Gala, just reached peak saturation this year, and everything was gorgeous and creative.
We talked about Warren Buffett earlier in the Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, I think that's a win in terms of like good succession planning and peaceful transition. That's good to see. Although I don't love the idea of like 90-year-old CEOs. I think that's too long. But it seems like really smooth, really well received, and everyone's paying tributes to a great American businessman.
I'm going to say some of those heroes are some of the tech CEOs that went to Kiss the Ring, were front row, and now their businesses are being like batted about like mice, basically, right now.
Yeah, and to build on that, I would say my losers are the law firms that agreed to deals with the administration, starting with the biggest loser of them all, Paul Weiss, which created a crack that was then exploited. There's no reason for these firms to do these deals. Every firm that has challenged the executive orders has won. The legal industry is looking down on these firms. Partners are leaving, associates are leaving. Clients this week, Microsoft dumped Simpson Thacher over it, and it continues to reverberate. And the story I read this week, which was something I had actually challenged one of these law firm leaders on last week, was that a big part of law firm pro bono was actually immigration cases. And there was a story this week in the Financial Times talking about how big law firms are no longer willing to take on those cases because of fear of angering the administration. They're not defending alleged gang members. They're defending victims of domestic violence, kids. I did one when I was an associate. Like, these are important cases. Can I do a public service message before we're done?
Oh, yes. Yes. We're heading into summer. And one of the things that I learned the most from in my life were the internships I did in college. And they are few and far between now. What do you think of that? Do you have interns?
Yeah, we have an intern on our podcast, which is great. But look, this is one of the worst like legal developments in the last 20 years. The intern litigations, because while I acknowledge that companies overused interns, the legal backlash to it, the snapback, really caused companies to take a posture of like interns are not worth it. It's too much risk. And that's terrible. It's terrible for young people. It's terrible for the pipeline of future development. So do the world a favor, do the country a favor. It's patriotic. It's part of your corporate responsibility to our country. Hire an intern. Pay them.
Hire an intern and
Pay them.
pay them so that you have a more varied pipeline. Only want kids whose parents can afford for them to not make money. When you pay, you're democratizing the situation. Let us know if you're doing interns this summer. I'm curious. All right. Peter, when people watch this, they will know who the next pope is. So excited.
So excited. I'm going to go pour myself a glass of Barolo right now to get ready for the announcement.
Okay. On that note,
Take care.